we have a very special guest who is joining us today. You all know Craig Pasta Jardula. We're going to admit him in just a second, but we are joined by Craig for a very good reason. He was on the ground this past weekend at the Libertarian presidential nominating convention, and he did some great reporting from there. We're going to show you guys a little sizzler reel of that reporting. Here's a sample of Pasta's work this past weekend at the Libertarian convention, and then we will admit him for this interview. So here's Craig Pasta Jardula at the convention in Washington this past weekend.
Hey everybody, Craig Pasta Jardula. We are here at the Libertarian National Convention here in Washington, D.C.
Would you recognize that a lot of the reasons we have so much migration to the border is our foreign policy?
I'm not going to blame our foreign policy on illegal immigration. I mean, part of the biggest reason we have illegal immigration into this country is Joe Biden is inviting them. I mean, they're being promised free benefits, amnesty, all of these other things. No, I'm not going to blame.
You don't think 100 bases in Latin America is a reason why stealing their resources is sending so many people to the border?
No, that's not the reason. I mean, I do think we should get the CIA out of Central and South America. I do think we should end all of the sanctions on Cuba. Those are just sane things to do. But blaming our foreign policy or blaming immigration on our foreign policy is almost as in Central America, I think is almost as ridiculous as blaming global warming on the illegal immigration.
Maj, what'd you think of the speech?
It was cool.
Yeah?
I think that regardless of whether he's lying or not, doesn't matter. His following has been introduced to liberty ideas that will expand their thought process. That's the law. I've been saying this the whole weekend. The law of exposure. Those followers that he has have now been exposed to Ross, have now been exposed to insert whatever, all of the liberty ideas. He's up there saying, whether it's true or not, he's up there saying, hey, I'm Donald Trump. I'm actually kind of a libertarian.
It has been part of the Democratic Party's longstanding vision to use large-scale illegal immigration as a way of acquiring long-run voters. And the best evidence for that is the fact that many of those people who did enter the country illegally are on a path to actually vote in elections, are on a path to citizenship, which allows them to vote. And so my view is there is an alignment of incentives here. It's no accident. It's not a coincidence that most of the people in the Democrat Party who favor open border policies are also the same people in the Democratic Party who are opposed to voter ID requirements in order to vote. I don't think that's a coincidence, and I think that reflects incentives.
But what evidence do we have, though? What evidence do we have that they would vote Democrat in the first place? A lot of these people who are coming across the border are very religious. They're not going to really go play into the LGBT community and whatnot, and we don't have any evidence.
So just because you have a plan doesn't mean it's going to be an effective plan. I actually agree with you that many people who are coming to this country share deeply foundational conservative values, pro-family values, pro-country values. And so it's my view that in the long run, just because they've laid that plot out doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to succeed for them.
Gave it a hell of a shot, man.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Your thoughts on the whole process and what you experienced today, Mr. Rectenwall?
Well, it kind of sucks winning 5 straight rounds and then losing in the last one. And I was promised an endorsement by one of the candidates who turned out to be a snake.
Yeah.
So lied to me 4 times. And that's just, the lack of integrity amongst these people. I'm stunned.
Chase, you are now the Libertarian candidate for President of the United States. You're going to come out of this pretty much an unknown by a lot of people who are not inside the Libertarian Party. How do you make a splash for the Libertarian Party for those out there who don't know who Chase Oliver is?
Well, I think it requires energy, enthusiasm, and running a bold campaign that takes no prisoners, that says we must free ourselves from the warfare state and the abuses of this overly abusive and intrusive state as it currently exists. If we run true to our principles with energy, enthusiasm, and passion, we will wake people up. Know one thing about me. I'm not a politically connected elite. I'm not somebody who was born with a silver spoon in my mouth or has been in politics for the last 50 years. I know what it means to be someone who lives paycheck to paycheck in this life. I have lived the life that so many Americans are and that so many Americans are struggling to get ahead with.
All right, there's a little sample of his work over the past weekend. You all know him, co-host of the Convo Couch and host of
You've
Pasta.
heard of gays and guns? Chase Oliver is both.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Co-host of the Convo Couch, host of Pasta to Go on YouTube and Rumble, our friend Craig Pasta Jardula. Pasta, yo pasta, que pasa?
Yo.
What's up, gentlemen?
How's it going, man?
It's going. It's been a long week, or whatever you say. I think we got here on a Wednesday night. Thursday, we hit the ground running, and we didn't stop. On Sunday, we had a 14-hour live stream. So it's been a little crazy, but it's been a lot of fun. And I really wish you guys could have joined me, because it was really, more than anything, a nuanced convention of sorts. I mean, I've been to Democratic conventions, whether it be state conventions in California or national conventions altogether. And, the DNC stuff is nothing compared to what we had going on over here with the Libertarian convention.
Yeah, it seems like, when you go to a Democratic convention or a Republican convention, it's this pageant. They're already kind of on the same page when they get there. They know who the nominee is going to be, right? The goal of that is a big sort of PR show for the party, whereas this kind of seemed like an old school convention where the party was really figuring out what it was and what it wanted to be moving forward. And as you saw in that little scissor reel I played, you had Thomas Massey there, you had Vivek Ramaswamy there, you had RFK, who's an independent but former Democrat until a few months ago, and then you had Trump there. So you had Republicans there, you had this former Democrat there. We don't see Democrats going to the Green Party convention asking for their support. Like, it was this kind of weird thing. And you mentioned, because you mentioned in a couple of these interviews, you consider yourself a libertarian leftist, and that you felt welcome there, and you felt that they were making a pitch to you, at least some of them. So do you want to describe that? Like, what made you feel like this is a good place to go to see what they're about? What was the diversity of thought in the room, in the hall, and in the hallways outside the main floor?
So goes the time, so goes the discussions, I would say, right? And right now we're dealing with this whole Ukraine-Russia situation, the Gaza-Israel situation. We have Julian Assange, who just won an appeal, but what did he really win anyways? Mad censorship. So, I mean, those were the topics that were most talked about at this convention. And these libertarians, especially the Mises caucus, the ones who have taken over the power, which is kind of inspiring. Remember when we had that pipe dream that we were going to be able to take over the Democratic Party if we just grassroots come together, the whole Bernie Bros clan, we're going to just take this party over.
Yeah, that was nigh around 2015. We were all full of piss and vinegar back in those days.
Yeah, we thought we were going to take over, but as we know now, the establishment is going to always rule with an iron fist. Squash.
Remember, they called us Bernie Bros, even though more than half of us were women.
I know.
Now I see RFK upside down back there. Is that because you're saying his campaign is in distress?
Well, it's a little in distress, but that was like inspiring in a way, right? On October 7th is when I left, or October 8th is when I said, no, I'm not going to support this guy anymore, right? And there was a lot of anti-imperialist leftists who felt the same, same thing with the libertarians. As RFK was coming out, as people were coming out of the RFK speech, I was catching them, asking them how they felt, and they were mostly delegates I was talking about, and they appreciated the fact that he went to them and tried to make a pitch. But I asked them all, would you vote for him? No. What if he was the libertarian candidate? Would you vote for him? No. Why? The major reason, Israel, Gaza. So that's when I say these libertarians are based when it comes to foreign policy, right? Ron Paul was there, and that's who the Mises caucus is. It's the party of Ron Paul. It's young, energetic energy, but they're really of Ron Paul. And it was inspiring to me. He got eliminated on the first ballot, less than 1% when he was nominated on the convention floor. Same with Donald Trump. So no matter what, these libertarians, they stick to their principles. They're not going to have a gun held to their heads. A lot of the Trumpers that were there when Trump was speaking, we caught video. We saw people going back and forth. And the Trumpers were giving their same old pitch. If you don't vote for Trump, Keaton and Russell, you're voting for Joe Biden. And then we're like, we don't care. We're voting for a libertarian.
Wow,
we're libertarian.
That's like the Bizarro world version of what we get from the Democrats.
Yeah. But other than that, we also talked about freedom of speech, freedom of a press. They had the big three. That's why you got the Free Ross sign behind me over there. Let me move out of the way. You can see it. Ross Ulbricht, they consider Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, and Ross Ulbricht the big three who are unjustly jailed. And I talked to them about Mumia. I talked to them about Leonard Peltier, which is really cool, and kind of get to educate them on that. A lot of them knew who they were. But I think they're going to start.
So if you ask
them.
that question at a Trump rally, if you ask them who Mumia is, they're gonna think it's an Ethiopian restaurant on Fifth Avenue.
Well, it's funny. They got a fake promise from Donald Trump to free Ross. You know, he said he will do it. He also said, I'll put a libertarian in my cabinet. Yeah, and people were celebrating that as if that promise means anything. I mean, come on. I know Tim Pool asked Donald Trump, will you free Julian Assange? He says, well, I'll think very seriously about it. As if he's not the one who prosecuted him in the first place and declined to pardon him on the way out. But the fact that they got those two names there was a huge draw. And had they not nominated this guy, see, at the time, I thought this was I thought they played Trump and RFK pretty well, because I thought, all right, we're going to invite these guys to the convention. We're going to get a lot of press out of the fact that they speak there. We're going to tell both of them to get their fucking shine box, and this will be a big commercial for our party. And it's true that more people know who Chase Oliver is now because they had Trump and RFK there than would have if they didn't.
Picked someone else.
In that case, it's a win. On the other hand, they picked Chase Oliver. But we'll get to that in a minute. I don't want to talk too much about him right now, because I want to talk about this split between the Mises Caucus and the classical Libertarian, because Ron Paul says the Mises Caucus are the Libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party. But it seems to me, from what I'm hearing, especially in their opposition to Chase Oliver, I would consider them more, and not that they are Trump aligned, but they're more populist, I would say. They stray more from libertarian orthodoxy than the classical liberal wing. Now, I'm not an expert on the party. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I get a sense of. How accurate is that?
You know, I don't know.
Because, you know, where you're on the left, you ask, 10 communists, what's communism, you get 10 answers. I'm sure it's similar on the libertarian side, right?
I would assume that too as well. And, when you speak to, listen, I met people who call themselves libertarian socialists. I was looking for them. Right. I found them. There was a small group of them. And the Mises Party is anti-socialism, just like the rest of the party itself, right? 80% of that party does not like socialism at all. I don't think they understand socialism, or they just have this American kind of view of it. They don't understand what, from what I've experienced. I'm getting ready to go up to Mexico to observe that election. But all those Latin American countries that I went to, when I observed that socialism, it's more like collectivism. It's a form of nationalism. They're coming together to get the empire off their neck, and that's why they have a socialistic government. And I kind of emphasize that going on. But the whole thing I'm so happy about more than anything is those libertarians understand that our foreign policy is the why we have so much migration. The interesting thing about Chase and his vice president is they're for open borders, right? Mike Matter, who is the is that how you say it? Mike Termott. Sorry. Mike Termott. He's the vice president, which I'll get to that story in a second, guys, because there was some juicy stuff. This was like boiler room as this, it was like as somebody gets eliminated, all these other candidates are going behind pillars, going outside doors, trying to make a deal. Get your guys to throw your strength my way. The light went off.
Because it's ranked choice voting, right? That's how they do it.
It's a form of ranked choice voting. It's amazing. Like when you said, these people don't know who their candidate's going to be. You aren't lying. They didn't know who it was going to be until that final vote was cast. Something interesting. As they were eliminating candidates, whatnot, they also have none of the above. NOTA. The second to last round, when there was two candidates left, none of them, neither one of them, Chase or Mike Rechtenwald, who you heard him come off the stage and speak, they met the plurality, right? They didn't have the 50% plus one. So they eliminate the bottom candidate each time. So on the last round, Chase Oliver had to run against none of the above. Had none of the above won, there would be no presidential candidate coming out of the Libertarian Convention. It was like, it was mind-blowing, because now you have a bunch of libertarians scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. You asked about that Mises Caucus, right? The Mises Caucus is in power. So naturally, all the other groups, the old school groups, the new groups that are coming around, they're just going to vote against the Mises Caucus because they want to take back power.
Right.
So now you have these people scrambling, realizing if they don't come out of this convention with a candidate, they're going to lose ballot access in 10 states like that, right? So it was like crazy times. They were trying to make deals. The vice president candidate, eventually they picked the vice president the same as the president, the same way. However, there was fewer candidates. And right after that whole Super Bowl grudge match for president, we got a little slice of the vice president one where Clint Russell, who had beaten up, he destroyed Vivek Ramaswamy in a vice presidential debate. he was now running against the guy that Chase Oliver wanted for his vice president, and Mike Turmat, and he just barely squeaked it out. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting. It was definitely like a form of democracy. Like I said, the conversations were great. You guys would have loved it.
Well, it's funny. If they had actually printed none of the above on their ballot line, they'd have probably won the whole election. I'd vote for none of the above over any of these candidates if they
Brewster's Millions, baby.
Exactly.
Please clap.